Hello, my name is Tracy Sinclair, and welcome to Coaching in Conversation, the Mastery Series. This series of conversations explores the concept of mastery in coaching. And I have the great pleasure of talking with several ICF Master Certified Coaches from around the world to understand what mastery really means to them, both as coaching practitioners and also as human beings. We explore many different perspectives and nuances of this topic, and I hope it is of use and interest to you as you continue to navigate your own pathway of development. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coaching in Conversation with myself, Tracy Sinclair, and this time my guest is Dr. Marcia Reynolds. Marcia is very passionate about how coaching opens minds to learning. She was also the 5th global president of the ICF and is recognised in the ICF's Circle of Distinction for her contributions to the global coaching community, and a 2024 Impact Award winner for supporting an organisation's coaching culture. And I had the great pleasure of knowing and working with Marsha for a couple of years while we were both serving on the ICF Global Board. She's published 5 books, including her international bestseller, Coach the Person, Not the Problem. And she has a doctorate in organisational psychology and 2 master's degrees in communication and adult learning. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you as part of our Mastery series. And this episode is called Stop Thinking and Be There. Enjoy. Well, Marsha, thank you so much for coming and joining me on my podcast. I've been very excited about this, and I've had quite a lot of comments from people recently around how they've been enjoying the podcast episodes, which is delightful for me. And so I've been telling quite a few people, well, you wait until this episode because I've got the opportunity to talk with you. So thank you so much for coming along and joining me for a little while.
Yeah, great. Thank you for asking.
Well, we've had a little bit of a conversation around where we might go, but I guess my opening inquiry with you, given that this is part of our Mastery series and offering listeners perspectives and ideas on what the concept of mastery actually means in coaching, I'd like to ask you that question. What does mastery mean for you?
Well, as you know, Tracy, we've been debating this and trying to encapsulate it for such a long time. But because mastery is far more abstract in definition, not necessarily in experience, but in definition, than just the regular competencies and how we assess that. But that's because mastery has so much more to do with the presence that we bring to the coaching conversation and the impact on people in the field between that isn't defined in the way normal people would. Well, people really focused on mechanics can truly identify. But what I've been doing lately, and actually it's based on something we just talked about, a few months ago, getting into the conversation of how long will we last with AI being around, and really getting into what differentiates coaching, which I believe is the mastery, the human element, that energy that we bring, the connection we make, the co-regulation of energies that will be difficult, if ever possible, for AI to replicate. So I've been researching that and studying that and putting that into my second edition of Coach the Person, because I think that's the critical element that all coaches, no matter where they are, not till they get their PCC, but need to be on this path of mastery, of really understanding what is the gift, the true gift we give, and how do we do that other than mechanics which can be replicated.
Mm, mm. Well, when we were talking earlier, I think I mentioned that this is an area that's really close to my heart as well, around
Mhm.
what is beyond behavioural skill,
Yeah.
because the actual mechanical skills can and will and are being replicated. And so what is that human element? Um, to play devil's advocate, I'd love your perspective on this. One of the things I'm observing
Hmm.
at the same time, both from from organizations, some organizations, but also from some people wanting to train as coaches,
Hmm.
is that they are still very focused on wanting the quick mechanical skills
Hmm.
as opposed to the depth of
Yeah.
the presence and the human energy and the work. And that,
Hmm.
yes, if I'm honest, that worries me a little bit, because I think
Yeah.
that is where our
Yeah.
domain is going to be. What are you noticing, or what's your perspective on that?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Is that really the progression? Uh, I can remember in the first coaching program that I was helping to develop, it's like, well, do we teach presence first or skills first? And we found when we tried to teach presence that the students, it's like, no, 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 just tell us what to do. And that, we had to like weave in the presence as this is just a part of doing the skills. Um, I think that fear, am I really giving value? Am I doing it right? That drives also that I need to have specifics to follow. But I think there's a great value to that because most people come into coaching from professions where they are experts. They're trainers, they're HR people, they're consultants, and they're telling. And so to make the shift from telling, advising, to being a thinking partner to coaching, that's a difficult transformation. And so by anchoring who I am with the skills, I think helps them to make that transformation. But as they go along and get better in their proficiency of skills, then they hit another difficult transformation. And that's, I always say, taking the skills from here and putting them back here. That when you know them well enough, you don't have to think about them. I know that I need to coach my client to really discover what does it look like that they want to create, what's getting in the way of creating that, and then what will you do next? I mean, just it's that. I know I'm doing that. But that's just, holding the frame. And moving into mastery then is that I'm really fully present with you. I'm not thinking. I'm present with you. I'm receiving what you're giving me. I'm offering it back to see what you think about it. And in that loop, and that my presence is with courage and compassion. You know I'm here for you. You trust me enough to open up and to continue it's a loop, but it dives deeper to
Mm,
really get that, that, oh, this is it. This is what's holding me back.
mm,
That the little breakthroughs that lead to the big one.
mm,
And so we've got two big transformation points that I think that people usually come into coaching. So I think it serves a purpose to learn the skills, to know that the distinction of coaching to do coaching, before you can actually then, okay, I'm comfortable enough with that. Let me release that and just be with them, which then moves you much forward on that into mastery.
mm.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really noticing your language there of be with them, which is
Hmm.
something I often hear myself saying to students around, you've got the doing of
Hmm.
coaching, and then you've got the being of the
Hmm.
coach. And so I'm hearing,
Uh-huh.
if I'm understanding you correctly, a connection here between that being and the concept of mastery.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I think again, if you want to look at it physically, that the importance of being fully open, not just your head and having an open mind, but an open heart with compassion, with care. I care about you, and you feel that from me, and then the courage to ask the question or make the reflection that may be challenging and cause some discomfort, and that's okay because it leads to learning. That then when I'm fully open, I'm not just stuck in my head thinking, what should I say next? Is this a good thing? Or will it bother them if I ask that? To not be in that place. So my being is that I'm fully open and here for you. I'm here for you. And if I catch myself thinking, I come back to, I am here for you.
Mm,
And so much of the research around what's called co-regulation is that when they feel that I am fully open and here for you, that it triggers the biochemistry in them, the oxytocin to want to be with you, to bond with you, the serotonin, the dopamine that says, okay, I'm willing to open my mind. I'm willing to go down this journey with you that I may not with anyone else. But we
mm,
can only do that with our emotional open presence. It's an emotional connection. And once we get to there, they will go down the road, even if there's discomfort in the exploration, because they fully do trust you. I always say, um, the competency is trust and safety. I say it's backwards. It's safety and trust. They have to feel safe in order to trust you. So, and we do that. It's not a cognitive process. It's an emotional connection. And that's why it's called being, because I'm bringing my whole self,
mm,
my whole imperfect self. And I accept that to
mm,
this conversation with you. And I'm just here to be your thinking partner. So I don't have to think about it because I'm not solving it for you. I'm just helping you think, to dissect your thoughts, to look into them in a way you can't do for yourself.
mm,
And that's the journey we go on. And that's, I mean, we've been around for a long time. I always have to remind coaches. Now, remember, I've been doing this for 30 years, because so when they say, well, I don't know if I could ever do that, not think, I'm like, you can, but it does. That's why for an MCC, it takes so many hours of coaching. You have to keep doing it and trusting yourself
mm.
that the right thing will come out. And if it doesn't, it doesn't matter. They'll correct you, which takes it to a deeper place. So,
I'm sure it's probably a little different for each coach, but coming from
mhm,
your perspective, what are
mhm,
some of the things that you would say in those 30 years have helped you, have enabled you to be
mhm.
able to access those qualities that allow for mastery to come into that
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing because before uh, I really, um, when I was just learning to be a coach, so I was going to say before I really got it, what I was doing, those first few years, it's like, okay, I'll do my best. But I had the fortunate opportunity. It was like just a year after it was 1996, that I was asked to create an audio program. I had been writing about being in the zone. How do athletes get into that space where nothing's bothering them, even though the game may be on the line and it's up to them? And I did create, it was back in the day when we had little cassettes, you know, and I created a program called Being the Success Stone. But I had interviewed professional athletes from 5 different sports, very well-known people, and discovered that there were some very much similarities. And I'm sure they got it from uh, their coach trainers, but they all said, we don't use self-talk. Because if I tell myself you're a winner, something back here goes, no, you're not, you're a loser. You know, that if you're stuck in your head, you cannot perform at your best. That in those moments when the fans are like booing you and and it's all up to you, that they were taught to drop their awareness to the center of their body, their point of strength, and just feel their body move, and the emotion would be just enjoyment of this experience that I have right now. And I think that was my first uh, real learning of it's not about thinking, it's about being and just being in this moment and enjoying this experience, you know, or wanting for you to have, in the end at least, an enjoyable experience. So that, and then learning the skills. So I think I had the opportunity to weave both as I was learning the skills. And then, as we get more and more into what truly can we do at our best. And, I've been writing books since then, but my first Outsmart Your Brain incorporated that work. And then getting into writing coaching books that I kept researching more about, the open nervous system and presence and what that brings to our skills. So I think that I fortunately, had been introduced to a lot of this, and that it was at the same time, 1997, when emotional intelligence came out, and I got way into that. I was one of the first to teach it in many countries because my second master's is in instructional design, so I whipped up a training program before other people. That was really great. But weaving all that together. But I have to say, Tracy, I think the biggest realization that I was not taught in my early coach training days was, what does it really mean, this agreement that we're trying to get to, and how critical that must be, especially once you know your skills. You don't ask it at the very beginning. So what do you want at the end of our session? Because they don't know. They're just going to reiterate the problem. You have to coach them into really understanding what do they mean with the words they use, and what is it they think they can't have but that they want, and why they think they can't have it. And until you unravel and unwrap the picture of what they truly want, and then to ask the key question, so who are you in that picture? And then to be able to coach the who, the identity of, what's it going to take to create this thing you really want. That's not just what the situation, but who you are in it. That I'm still working to refine what that is and how we get there, because I believe that's the placeholder, and yes, of course it can evolve and change as you go on, but if you don't have that, it's very difficult to really get huge breakthroughs. You can get solutions, you can get movement forward, but to really have them see themselves differently, not just the situation, that's the seeds of true sustainable behavioral change.
Mm.
So I get, as you see, very excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it resonates
Mm.
strongly in as much as we know, don't we, that competency three is, or establishing the agreement, maintaining the agreement, is something that is often the other way around, and we have
Mm.
such a focus on the topic.
Yeah.
How often
Hmm.
I hear people using that as a means to an end, where they think I've got to
Yeah.
get the topic clear so that I can start the work, when actually, as you're clearly describing,
Yeah.
the work is not just establishing the topic, but establishing
Yeah.
who and where is the client within that context.
And the topic is just what we're going to talk about. It's a generic thing. Just ask them what's on your mind. What do you want to talk about today? That's the topic. That's just an opening. It's
Yeah.
not the thing. It's not where we're going. That's just an opening.
Yeah.
And again, the great value that we provide is the difficulty that they can't do on their own, and their own trying to solve it. And so, again, they don't know exactly what that is. To really coach them into seeing it is such a gift. So
Yeah.
they're not able to give it to you right up front because they don't really have it.
Yeah. They're not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So given where the world is, such a huge question
I
I'm putting
know.
up here, picking whatever aspect of it we might want to, but we're in an interesting place, let's call it, in the world
Yeah.
right now. And coaching has an interesting role in that vis-a-vis AI that you've already referenced, and maybe coaching vis-a-vis what is needed in the world right now.
Mhm.
What are your reflections? And I know we haven't got 3 hours to discuss this, but what are your thoughts
Right.
on our place, and
Yeah.
what do we need to become,
Yeah.
be, and do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even looking back and through uh, the 16 years I ran training departments in corporations, before I even came to coaching, it was always like, to me, crazy logic that anytime we got into economic crisis, a market crisis, something going on uh, that was impacting the company, they would cut training, and developing people. It's like, we don't have time for that right now, and it's like, no, now is the time you need it. And there was, when I taught leadership for Maersk for years, yeah, that they said, no, no, we're facing, big problems in the shipping world. So we need leaders to use coaching skills. That was the first time and one of the few times I've seen that. So fast forward to today, emotions and when you have fear, when you have frustration and there's so much uncertainty, it actually decreases your ability to think, because it puts you in fight and flight mode.
Yeah.
So your blood flow is going to your limbs regardless, and your brain saying, well, no, you have to be in survival, it's not about thinking. So we're less able to think through what it is that we should now do. How do we be in these chaotic times? And so the value then of having a coach is to be able to, okay, let's sit down and, and be with me, and let's really look at what's going on here, what's really happening, even that the ease they may have in being with us that releases some of that adrenaline, that they can then think a little bit more clearly as to how do we be in these times
Mm,
instead of just being reactionary and
mm,
uh, making wrong decisions because of that.
mm,
So
mm.
I think it's the most perfect time,
Yeah.
to have coaches, whether it's one-on-one or team coaches, group coaches. It's critical that we need to really think through these times instead of just hold on and wait and see what happens, or start, making decisions that hurt in the long run.
Mm, mm. One of the maybe characteristics that's perhaps linked a little bit to that is one of the other things I'm noticing, as well as like cuts in budgets and all of those things that often happen in these times,
Yeah.
um, is the world is speeding up, isn't it? I mean, it's been speeding
Mhm.
up for quite a long time, and now we're at sort of speeds that are
Mhm.
almost beyond comprehension. And I remember I was on an AI writing course myself recently during March, and by the time we'd finished the 3 week course, the software we were using had been upgraded twice in
Yeah.
3 week in that 3 week
Yeah.
period. And everything we did in week one was defunct, and we had to do again in week three, which was quite fascinating.
Yeah.
But this idea of everything speeding up, and I'm
Mhm.
conscious, of books like Cal Newport's new book of
Mhm.
slow productivity. We
Mhm.
know that to some extent we're going too fast, and
Mhm.
coaching is a process of inviting us into a space of slowing down.
Mhm.
Feels in a way that we're almost sort of having to swim upstream a little bit in terms of
Mhm.
the pace and the energy of where systems within the world are moving, and we're
Mhm.
coming in with an invitation for a slower pace. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Though, as you started that, I remember there was some quote some years ago that I read that about how the evolution of technology is running so much faster than the evolution of the human. You know, and I don't know if it's about catching up. It's, because really when you look at AI, it's like, how can I use it to help me, not just to to replicate me, but to help me to better do my writing, the work that I have to do. Um, but when it comes back to coaching, I don't coach people on their business processes because I think that's really more advising than coaching, and it's not of interest to me. But we're still dealing with humans that are all going through this experience of I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't know what's going to happen to me and my work, and it's all very scary. And it's the human to human element that we pull each other through these times and still be creative, innovative, um, and keep growing in what we're doing. So it's difficult. I mean, courage is acting in the face of fear. So to say, well, be with someone to take away their fear. No, you're not going to take it away, but to acknowledge it and say, yeah, I get it's scary times. And so what do we do at this moment that's best for us? And that comes out through dialogue, whether it's even coaching, but open, safe dialogue that we work together to think through the collective um, that is far more innovative than the individual.
Mm.
And I think that's the best thing we can do for this time.
It strikes me as you're describing that, how coming back to safety and psychological
Hmm.
safety is kind of coming into the foreground again there of how do we, even if we're not coaching,
Yeah.
because safety, we can, in these kinds of times, vulnerability is high, isn't it? Higher than perhaps even it would
Hmm.
normally be. So that sense of safety and what our presence is doing to inform that safety
Yeah.
is really
Well,
critical.
yeah, I mean, even if you're, working in a company and you're a leader and you're, hurrying down the hallway and someone comes up and says, I really have an important question I need to ask you. Can you not just stop for a moment and turn around and look at the person and see them just for a moment? Is it really, really that urgent that you can't give them just a minute, even enough to say, wow, I can see this is really important to you, so let's book a time so we can really look at this instead of just rushing through the hallway. And
Yeah,
how critical just that moment is for people, that we forget that. So not to be run by the urgency, but to remember that it just takes a moment to help someone feel seen and valued.
yeah,
And that makes all the difference in the world.
yeah.
Mhm.
That concept of being seen and valued seems to be coming up a lot in some of the supervision groups that I
Mhm.
hold with people.
Mhm.
Around how they're actually, in some cases, saying less and less and less, and they're really there to witness and
Yeah.
and see the
Mhm.
person, for the person to feel
Yeah.
seen and heard and
Mhm.
and valued or acknowledged in some way, which of
Yeah.
course goes back to this concept of presence again, perhaps.
Mhm. Yeah, I always say the less I say, the more profound I am. You know, um, it's interesting. Years ago, when I took improv acting to be more authentic on the stage, there was an exercise that one of the teachers would have us do where we would, be in a big area and maybe 20 people in the class, and we had to silently walk around the room. And every time I would pass you, I would really have to see you just for a moment, see you, and then move on. But we had to see each person we passed. We couldn't just quickly, and you don't do it with a smile. Our tendency when we look at someone is to smile, he said, you don't have to smile, just see them.
Yeah,
And how difficult that was to do that and to do it for an extended time. Okay, we walked around, but you got to walk around again and see the same people again. And we would do it for like 5 minutes, and that was seemed like forever. But it indicated how little we really see people,
Yeah.
and how it's always been important. It's like the human soul longs to be seen. And again, like you said, with these times that where we're just like so busy and so engaged in what we're doing that we see people less and less.
Mm.
And isn't that, you're right, sometimes that is the greatest value we give as coaches is in this moment, I see you.
Yeah.
I see you. And maybe they need full-on coaching, and maybe they just need that safe space to talk, and you just use a lot of silence, reflect a little bit, maybe ask a question here or there. But even that, isn't that a great gift?
Mm. Mm.
So, yeah.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about this idea of silence and just seeing someone
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
not even actively smiling to engage in a different way, but to
Yeah.
literally just see them. And it reminds me of many times on coach trainings of exercises around holding silence and
Yeah.
how very quickly the emotion can
Hmm.
surface. And I've witnessed beautifully sometimes some
Yeah.
ex completely non-verbal exchanges between people without
Uh-huh.
gesticulating either,
Yeah, right.
almost like an
Yeah.
energy
Hmm.
exchange where there is a complete shedding of
Hmm.
something that's been witnessed and there's no verbal exchange at all.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an exercise that I do. I'm not going to say the whole thing, but at the end, um, they have to look at each other and appreciate each other for
Mm.
10 seconds. But the whole room has to be quiet before I even start counting to 10. You know, it's a little different doing it on Zoom, but in my research, it said that we're comfortable holding eye contact for around 5 seconds, a little bit longer for women than men, because they said most men, their brain see it as a confrontation um, in holding the eye contact. But to recognize that moment when you're fully uncomfortable in around 5, 6 seconds, and just to remember, I'm here to appreciate you, to breathe, because that's what happens is many of them hold their breath. I say, okay, time, and they're like, ah. you know, but to breathe through it, to hold it, and just appreciate each other for 10 seconds. When we finally get to that state, you're absolutely right. How many people start crying,
Yeah,
or they jump up and hug each other, because
yeah,
to get beyond the threshold of comfort into that, really, I appreciate you, I'm here for you, with silence.
yeah,
There's some magic to that.
yeah. And I know that we're not in the business of giving advice, obviously, as coaches, but if you were to
Mhm.
offer any thoughts for coaches who are now wanting to really cultivate their presence, to
Yeah.
really think about how can they, if we are saying that the future of our work is
Mm.
around that deepening of presence that goes
Yeah.
beyond the mechanical skill, that we put that back here, you know, how can we invite people to think about how they cultivate that presence?
Yeah. Well, there's the simple exercises of mindfulness, or, I live in the desert, and I love just going out and being in the desert. And I must be very present, especially this time of year as we're moving into towards summer. The rattlesnakes will wake up. So I must be present because I can get in trouble if I'm not, And so over the years, and I've been, even since a young girl, hiking around in the desert, and because it helps me when I'm not feeling present to come back to presence. But I think the next phase is to go places where it's going to take away your presence, especially, when I work around judgment, because we're all judgy people. We judge all the time as a matter of survival. I say go places where you know your judgment's going to be triggered. You know, the airport, a busy grocery store, and or a meal with your family. You know, and and recognize where in your body you feel it, because judgment is an emotion. It's not an opinion. It's the emotion of judgment that then triggers the opinion. And can you catch yourself judging? And the sooner you can catch it, then you can breathe into it and release it and come back to, what do you want to feel at this moment? Is it curiosity? Is it compassion? Is it just patience? Whatever that is, but to then take in the emotion that will override um, the emotion of judgment. So to really work at not just going sitting somewhere where you can be mindful, but to go places where it's tough.
Yeah, yeah,
And work on coming back to presence in those moments. That I think that's the best practice.
yeah. I love that idea. I remember years ago when meditation was sort of the big thing when it first came into the
Yeah.
UK. They would
Mm.
always have this thing of you can get good enough to meditate on the top of a bus when it's
Oh,
busy,
right.
where you don't need a little quiet Zen room with your cushion
Yeah.
and your incense, that you could actually meditate quite serenely on the top of a crazy bus with loads of people around.
I
So
love that.
it's
It's a
that,
great image too.
it's that kind of concept, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm mindful of our time, and I'm just wondering what
Mm-hmm.
else would be useful for us in terms of what you would like to share
Mm-hmm.
with anyone listening, either around mastery in coaching
Mm-hmm.
or what is being called for from us. What is our call to
Yeah.
action almost as coaches in the world at the moment?
Mm. I think a lot of what we've talked about, but one of the things we talked about before we started the recording was my surprise about finding out that breakthrough coaching is like one of the top ebook sellers in Europe, and it's not in the US. But Coach the Person, Not the Problem is off the charts here, and it's translated in 8 languages and all that. But I think the titles, that the Coach the Person is more about the skills. Although my second edition coming out next year, I flipped it and putting presence first and then the skills. But the title, how do I really coach the person? Just making that transition. But I'm thrilled of how well it's doing in Europe with the title of Breakthrough. That I'm really looking at, what does it take, that mastery, to really break through the frames of my clients, thinking just through being there with them, and reflecting and asking questions that lead them in their thinking to expand, to go beyond, and possibly totally change how they see a situation and themselves. So I think that what coming back to, what is the intention of coaching? And even on the competencies, what's really the intention of the competencies? And I know you teach that it's not just the doing, and what is it you're really trying to do for the person with this?
Yeah.
That's so critical. That coming back to remembering that I am a thinking partner. I'm not the expert. I'm not, I don't know more. You know stuff, and I'm just here to help you think that we are equals in this conversation. I want you to feel that. And it must be a felt sense, because otherwise the brain's going to see the coach is still the socially dominant person in the conversation. So again, coming back to that presence, that I am here for you, that you feel comfortable for me, that we are in this together, and I'm here to help you think.
Mm,
And to remember that as we go in, that's the greatest value that we give
mm.
when we're coaching. And it's the distinction of coaching, and it will help us survive AI.
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I was
that,
also thinking
yeah.
about that, to
Mm-hmm.
that point about human coaches versus AI coaches,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is, there's such a lot of separation in the world, isn't there, at the moment? We think we're so
Oh,
connected because we've got, you and I are in very different parts of the world, and here we are. So, which is lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And the way our interaction is structured now starts
Yeah.
to strip out a lot of actual human connection. And
Yeah.
so, I wonder what life will be like just interacting with a bot
Yeah.
as opposed to a human being. So I think it's coming
Mm-hmm.
back to this place of being with
Yeah.
and seeing and acknowledging again that humans
Yeah.
need that human
We
to
need that.
human
The
feeling.
soul yearns for it, and it's not, maybe I can have a companion in a bot that I can talk to. I mean, I have my cat, and she's a pretty good companion most of the time, but there is something about human connection, that is when we don't have that, the impact on our mental health,
Yeah,
as well as our capabilities of what we can accomplish. There's so much research that shows that.
yeah,
And that too, do we even fully understand it? I don't think so. But just to know that we do need that. And so to say I don't need anybody, um, really? Or is that just your fear talking that I have nobody? Yeah.
mm,
So, and all this technology has separated us so much that we've gotten used to talking to people this way.
yeah,
And I was so happy when I could go back to traveling so I could get back out in the world and see my coach friends again, because I get very isolated here in my own home. Do I have some friends? Yes, but it's so easy just to sit in front of the computer and do work.
mm, absolutely.
So, yeah. So to take myself out, you
Yeah,
know,
it's really important.
yeah. And I'll
Yeah,
go do some things that are like, yeah, it's okay, but I'm with people. And I think we should never give that up.
yeah.
Hmm.
Well, on that note, I couldn't agree more. We should never give that up. And however, for today, I'm grateful for Zoom because it did allow us to talk. And I thank you once again for your time, Marsha. And I'm really looking forward to the next edition of Coach the Person topic
Thank
then,
you.
and all of the other great work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's really been a great conversation. I've enjoyed being with you too.
Thank you. You have been listening to Coaching in Conversation by Tracy Sinclair, a podcast aimed at exploring how coaching is a vehicle for human development in today's and tomorrow's world. You can learn more about coach training and development at tracysinclair.com and follow us on social media. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a rating and review, and also share it with your networks to help us expand our reach. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.